Lucius darted through the maze of twisted metal like a rat avoiding the cat's claw. The deep space scrapyard stretched out in atmospheric composition, while being dragged through a ship that looked like a child's fever dream of an Escher painting. She managed to kick out just enough to make her point. Would it kill you to ease up a bit, buddy? I'm not a sack of potatoes, you know. The alien escort, a creature that resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a blender, emitted a series of clicks that Vesper assumed was laughter, or indigestion. Hard to tell with these things. Talos, being the ever-reliable partner, piped up from behind her. Maybe they think you're a rare delicacy, Ves. You know, the vintage human with just a hint of sass. Vesper rolled her eyes, a feat made difficult by the fact that her head was currently upside down. If you think I'm a delicacy, wait till you try the sardonic sidekick. He's a real treat. They were unceremoniously deposited into what appeared to be a glass cage. About the size of a modest studio apartment, it came complete with a single bed, a non-functional toilet, and a distinct lack of privacy. Home sweet home, Talos quipped, rubbing the back of his neck where the alien had grabbed him. Better than my first apartment, Vesper said, taking stock of their surroundings. At least this place doesn't have cockroaches. Probably. The ceiling was low, the walls transparent, and beyond them, a menagerie of bizarre creatures shuffled, slithered, and occasionally belched in various shades of confusion. Welcome to the zoo, human edition. They were the new exhibit, and the sign probably read Homo sapiens, imminent extinction. A shimmering holographic display flickered to life, projecting a message in a language that looked like a cat had walked across a keyboard. It quickly translated to something they could understand, though the syntax was still shaky. Welcome, humans. You are part of a very special collection. Your species is unique, predicted to end soon. How delightful for us to have you, Vesper snorted. I always wanted to be part of something special. Just didn't think it'd be the countdown to extinction. Talos shrugged, leaning against the glass. Look on the bright side, we won't have to pay rent. The hologram continued, oblivious to their commentary. The great prophecy of the end has been foretold by the grand oracle of Zathrak. Humanity's days are numbered, as stars are destined to fall from the sky and blot out your sun. Welcome to the zoo, last of your kind, Vesper scowled. Great, now we're part of some intergalactic doomsday cult. And here I thought I'd missed out on the whole cult experience in college. Talos chuckled, though there was a tightness in his voice. I've always wanted to be in a prophecy, just not this one. Maybe we should ask for an autograph from the oracle before we all go kablooey. They were interrupted by the arrival of an alien curator, a being that looked like a sentient coat rack. It clacked its appendages together in what could only be an attempt at applause. Marvelous, such wit, such spirit. You will make a fine addition to our exhibit. Very lively. Vesper raised an eyebrow. Lively, huh? That's one way to describe two humans on the edge of cosmic oblivion. The curator's appendages waved like a conductor at a symphony of chaos. Exactly. The end of your kind is a rare spectacle, and you two will be our finest performers. Well, I always wanted to be famous, Vesper said dryly. Just didn't think it'd be as the last pair of humans alive. Talos stepped forward, his expression serious. Listen, coat rack, or whatever you are, there's gotta be a way out of this. We're not exactly exhibit material. The curator clacked again, a sound like bones in a blender. Oh, there's always a way out. But it involves embracing the prophecy or perhaps rewriting it. If you were clever enough, Vesper and Talos exchanged a glance. Clever was their middle name, or at least it would be if they'd been given the chance to choose their own. The curator left, leaving them alone with their thoughts, or what passed for thoughts when your species was supposedly circling the drain. Vesper paced the confines of their glass cage, her mind racing. So, we have to embrace or rewrite a prophecy about our doom. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, Talos followed her with his eyes, a wry smile tugging at his lips. We've done worse on a Tuesday. Remember that time on the mining colony? You mean when the whole place was about to blow because someone, She gave him a pointed look, decided to try and hotwire a security drone. That drone was clearly asking for it, standing there all superior and whatnot. Talos defended with mock seriousness. And yet here we are again facing certain doom. At least we're consistent. They settled into a routine of sorts, if you could call it that. Days, or what they assumed were days, blurred together. They'd eat the strange alien mush provided, a substance that tasted like wet cardboard had a baby with expired oatmeal. They'd sleep or they'd try to. Mostly they talked. You ever think, Vesper asked one morning, that maybe there's more to this prophecy thing? What if it's not just some cosmic joke? That's a lot of faith you're putting in a prediction made by a planet of coat racks. Hey, someone's gotta have faith. Otherwise, we're just waiting for the end credits to roll, and I didn't sign up for a feature-length tragedy. Weeks passed, or maybe months. Time was a fluid concept when you were a caged attraction on a ring world. The prophecy loomed over them like a dark cloud, constant and unyielding. One day, Talos stood at the edge of the cage, looking out at the other exhibits. You ever wonder if the other creatures know what's going on? I mean, are they all in on the cosmic joke at our expense? If they are better actors than I gave them credit for, Vesper replied, joining him. But maybe they are just as clueless. Or maybe they got their own prophecies to worry about. Talos turned to look at her, his eyes serious. We need to figure this out, Ves. If there's even a sliver of a chance we can change our fate, I know. But changing fate wasn't exactly covered in any of the manuals I read. Good thing we're not ones to follow manuals. The two of them continued to scheme, their whispered plans a bomb against the looming threat of extinction. They were determined, even if the odds were less than zero, because what else could they do? Give up, not their style. One evening, as they sat together, leaning against the glass wall, Vesper said softly, "You know, if this really is the end, I'm glad I'm here with you." Talos chuckled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You always did know how to pick your company, Ves." They sat in comfortable silence, the thread of prophecy hanging like a guillotine. But if they had to go down, they'd go down fighting. Or at least they'd go down laughing in the face of cosmic doom. The next day they were woken by a strange noise, a low hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Vesper shot upright, wide-eyed. What now? The soundtrack to our demise. Talos stood, eyes scanning the surroundings. I don't know, but it sure sounds like the universe is clearing its throat. The humming grew louder, vibrating the very air around them. Suddenly, the holographic display flickered to life once more, the alien script translating as always. "Attention humans, a change is upon us. The Grand Oracle wishes to speak." Vesper felt her stomach drop. Great. Just when I thought our audience with fate couldn't get any more personal, Talos gave her a reassuring squeeze of the hand. Well, let's see what the future has to say. Maybe it's not all bad news. As the humming reached a crescendo, the display shimmered and shifted, revealing a new sight. The Grand Oracle, in all its glowing, inscrutable glory, appeared before them, its presence filling the confines of their glass cage. The Oracle's voice was like nothing they had heard before, a melody of 1,000 whispers. "Humans, I see the paths before you. The end is written, but it need not be read as you believe. Choices remain, roads unwritten." Vesper exchanged a look with Talos. "Does that mean?" "It means," Talos interrupted, "we might just have a chance to flip the script." With the Oracle's words lingering, a spark of hope ignited. They weren't out of the woods yet, or the glass cage, but the path forward seemed just a little less bleak. Vesper grinned a wolfish grin. "Looks like we might have a chance to rewrite this prophecy after all." Talos nodded, determination and mischief gleaming in his eyes. "Let's give fate a run for its money, shall we?" As they stood together, ready to face whatever lay ahead, one thing was clear. They would not go quietly into this good night. Not without a fight, or at least a sarcastic quip or two. The universe might be against them, but they still had each other. And if there was one thing they knew how to do, it was defy the odds. Vesper looked out at the vast alien zoo, her voice a fierce whisper. "Bring it on." The Grand Oracle's shimmering visage faded, leaving Vesper and Talos alone with their wild thoughts and a throbbing sense of impending doom. Of course, doom had been their constant companion ever since they'd become the main attraction at this interstellar zoo. But now, with a cryptic promise of choice dangled before them, it was like doom had started offering free drinks. Vesper sighed, leaning back against the cool glass of their cage. So, we have to play choose-your-own-adventure with a prophecy. Fantastic. Talos shrugged, that signature smirk glued to his face. Hey, I always liked those books. Never expected to star in one, though. The zoo was a sprawling chaos of life, or whatever passed for life across the galaxy. Their glass cage offered a panoramic view of the other exhibits, each one a unique blend of weirdness and resignation. To their right, a towering creature resembling a cross between a giraffe and a cactus stood motionless, its spines glistening in the artificial light. To the left, a gelatinous mass of tentacles writhed lazily in its own enclosure, as if bored with existence. Vesper watched the tentacle beast with a wry smile. "You think they're content with this zoo gig?" "I dunno," Talos replied, squinting at the creature. "But if I was a blob of spaghetti, I might find this place downright homey." As they observed their neighbors, they couldn't help but notice a pattern. Most of the alien captives appeared resigned, accepting their fate like a bad haircut on prom night. It was a disheartening revelation, and one that only fueled their determination to escape. They weren't about to let some foreboding cosmic prediction tell them how their story ended. "Look at them," Vesper said, nodding towards a vibrant enclosure housing what looked like a sentient bush. "They've given up. They've bought the whole prophecy package." Talos scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Yeah, well, maybe they just haven't tried hard enough to find the exit. Or maybe they've all just come to terms with being the universe's version of garden gnomes." Their days followed a monotonous routine, punctuated only by the bizarre antics of their interstellar neighbors and the occasional visit from their alien escort, Mantis Blender, as they'd taken to calling it. The creature was a masterpiece of evolutionary confusion, its multi-jointed limbs and swiveling appendages an unsettling sight. Mantis Blender would check on them periodically, its movements a symphony of mechanical efficiency. "How are our esteemed guests today?" it would ask, its voice a blend of grinding gears and static. Vesper would reply with her usual snark, "Still breathing, still plodding. You know, the usual." One day, as Mantis Blender was about to leave, Talos stopped it with a question. "So, what's the deal with this prophecy? Why's everyone so convinced it's set in stone?" The alien paused, its mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "The Grand Oracle's prophecies are considered absolute. It has seen the future in ways you could not comprehend. To challenge it is to court madness." Vesper shot Talos a sideways glance. "Well, lucky for us, madness is kind of our specialty." The alien stared at them with what might have been confusion or indigestion, hard to tell with a face like that. Then it clattered away, leaving them once more with their thoughts and a growing sense of rebellion. Vesper turned to Talos, her eyes steely. "We have to get out of here. If we just sit back and let this prophecy thing play out, we'll be as good as extinct." "Couldn't agree more," Talos replied, his tone as dry as a desert. "And besides, I have a sneaking suspicion that our captors aren't the best at following through on their cosmic predictions. I mean, have you seen their so-called food? Their meals continued to be a bland affair, a pace that defied any culinary classification. They'd taken to calling it gloop, and the only thing it was good for, besides sustaining life, was comedic relief." Vesper poked at her portion with a grimace. "You know, if I squint, this looks like something familiar." "Yeah?" Talos asked, raising an eyebrow. "What is it?" Vesper smirked. "Misery." Throughout the microcosm of chaos that was the zoo, the prophecy's influence was undeniable. Around them, alien creatures carried on with their lives, each exhibit a testament to the Grand Oracle's reach. The tentacle blob had etched a pattern into the floor of its cage, an intricate design that could have been a prayer or a tic-tac-toe game gone wrong. Vesper watched the blob with curiosity. "What do you think it's doing?" Talos snorted. "Summoning its alien god." or maybe trying to spell out help in semaphore. As they observed the other exhibits, it became clear that escape was not a concept familiar to their fellow captives. The prophecy had sunk its claws deep, and most had accepted their fate, clinging to the hope that the oracle's whispers would somehow offer salvation, or at least an interesting diversion. But Vesper and Talos were not most creatures. Their resolve only deepened, fueled by the knowledge that they were not alone in their plight. They were determined to find a way out, to defy the odds and rewrite the story. And if the universe insisted on throwing destiny in their faces, they would throw it right back with interest. One afternoon, as they huddled together in their glass prison, Vesper leaned close and whispered, "I've been thinking. We need to learn more about this prophecy, about what it really says." Talos nodded. "Agreed, and maybe, just maybe, there's a loophole we can exploit. Something our coat rack friends overlooked." They spent their days piecing together information, eavesdropping on the snippets of conversation between their captors, piecing together the prophecy's puzzle like a particularly vicious jigsaw. It was slow work, but they were patient. They had to be. "The prophecy mentions falling stars and a sunless sky," Vesper mused one evening, pacing the confines of their cage. "Maybe there's something we can do to make that happen." Talos tapped his chin thoughtfully. "Or maybe we can convince them it's already happened. You know, get them to panic and open the doors to let us save the day." Vesper grinned. "I like the way you think, partner." A good con always did get my blood pumping. Their schemes spun into a web of possibility, each idea crazier than the last. They were determined to turn the prophecy on its head, to show the universe that humans were not to be trifled with. The zoo was a prison, yes, but it was also a stage on which they would perform the greatest escape act the galaxy had ever seen. As the days passed, they began to notice subtle changes in their surroundings. The other exhibits seemed to grow restless, as if sensing the humans' determination. The air thrummed with potential, a tension that simmered just below the surface. Vesper could feel it in her bones, a promise of something more, something different. The day of reckoning drew near, and they stood ready to face whatever challenge the universe dared throw at them. Vesper and Talos were the last of their kind, but they were far from defeated. Their spirits were unbroken, their resolve unshakable. One evening, as they sat side by side, Talos chuckled softly. "You know, if we pull this off, we'll be legends." Vesper leaned her head against his shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "Damn right we will. The kind of legends that make people laugh and cry, all at once." And so, with the cosmos watching, they prepared to take the stage. Fate may have had its plans, but Vesper and Talos had theirs too. They would not be remembered as the last of their kind, but as the first to defy destiny and carve a path through the stars. The zoo was a microcosm of chaos, a testament to the prophecy's reach, but it was also a playground for the determined. The prophecy had set the stage, but the humans were about to steal the show. As the lights dimmed and the stars began to fall, they knew the time had come. The universe was counting down, a heartbeat echoing in the void, and they were ready to dance to its rhythm. With a final glance at each other, a shared grin of mischief and defiance, they whispered their challenge to the cosmos. "Bring it on." Vesper and Talos sat in their glass cage, the looming prophecy of Homo sapiens, imminent extinction hanging over them like a particularly stubborn rain cloud. The grand oracle was supposedly all-seeing, all-knowing, and, in their humble opinion, likely full of cosmic horseshit. They had a plan, and if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was ignoring good advice. "We need a way to turn this prophecy on its head," Talos said, prodding at the holographic display. "Something that makes these aliens question their own predictably grim outlook." Vesper nodded. "And maybe something that gets us a free ticket out of this intergalactic freak show." Their whispered words of rebellion were drowned out by the familiar clatter of Mantis Blender approaching. The alien escort's head swiveled like it was searching for a lost contact lens, then stopped abruptly in front of their cage. "Greetings, esteemed guests. How fare you today?" Its voice was a series of mechanical whirs and clicks, the alien equivalent of friendly customer service. "Oh, you know," Vesper drawled, "just basking in the luxury of our cosmic glass condo." Talos chimed in, and plotting the downfall of interstellar tyranny. "You know, the usual." Mantis Blender's antennae twitched, possibly in confusion. It paused, as if processing a particularly difficult math problem before moving on, leaving Talos and Vesper to resume their scheming. "All right," Vesper said, leaning closer. "We need more intel on this prophecy. We can't just wing it with half-baked ideas and sarcastic remarks." Talos rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Half-baked ideas and sarcasm have gotten us this far. But yeah, I get your point." Their planning sessions had an air of desperate defiance, the kind that comes from having nothing left to lose. They needed to find a way to blend in with the chaos and use it to their advantage. The zoo was a circus, and they were determined to be the main attraction, if only for the closing act. Their opportunity came from an unexpected source, a grizzled alien named Quor. Quor looked like a result of a mad scientist's failed experiment, part reptile, well, something that defied easy classification. It sidled over to their cage one day, eyes glinting with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "Heard you humans are cooking up something," Quor said, its voice guttural and low. "Or is it just the smell of that god-awful gloop they feed us?" Talos raised an eyebrow. "Depends. You looking for a way out or just hoping for a better lunch menu?" Quor chuckled, a sound like gravel in a blender. "A little of both, but mostly I'm just tired of hearing about that damn prophecy. If you can give it the finger, I'm in." Vesper exchanged a look with Talos. "Why help us? What's in it for you?" Quor glanced around, eyes narrowing. "I've been here too long, seen too much. The prophecy's always been a load of space dust if you ask me. Maybe it's time someone shook things up. It was an unlikely alliance, but in a place where freedom was a distant memory, unlikely was their best bet. Together, they formulated a plan that was as risky as it was reckless. "So, you think you can get us a meeting with the Grand Oracle?" Vesper asked, skeptical. Quor snorted. "Get you a meeting? No. But I can get you past the first couple of doors, maybe point you in the right direction. After that, you're on your own." Talos grinned. "That's more than enough. We're good at improvising." The plan was a simple one: create chaos, slip past the guards while they were distracted, and find a way to the Grand Oracle's chamber. Easy enough if you ignored the colossal odds stacked against them. The next day, their hearts raced as they put the plan into action. Quor created a diversion by causing a ruckus in his cage, while Talos and Vesper slipped out during the commotion. Mantis Blender and its cohorts scuttled about, antennas twitching in frustration. "You sure this is gonna work?" Vesper whispered as they tiptoed down a corridor that seemed to twist back on itself like an overcooked noodle. "Nope," Talos replied, a lopsided grin on his face. "But that's never stopped us before." Their escape route took them through a labyrinth of corridors, each one more confusing than the last. The ship had the unfathomable architecture of an Escher painting, and only a fool or two desperate humans would dare navigate it without a map. Just as they began to lose hope, they stumbled upon a chamber bathed in a soft, eerie glow. An enormous, pulsing sphere dominated the center, and within that sphere floated the Grand Oracle itself, a creature of pure energy, shifting and changing like a living kaleidoscope. "Welcome, travelers of the void," it intoned, its voice a symphony of whispers. "You seek answers, yet answers are but shadows of understanding." Talos stepped forward, his usual cocky demeanor tempered by curiosity. "Look, we're not here for a philosophy lesson. We just want to know why we're stuck in your little zoo." The oracle's form shifted, a myriad of colors rippling through its incorporeal body. "The prophecy has spoken. Your kind is to fade from existence, a mere footnote in the annals of time." Vesper snorted. "A footnote? We're at least a chapter, thank you very much." Ignoring the oracle's grandiose threats, they pressed on. "Isn't there a way to change it?" Talos asked, hoping for a glimmer of hope. "The future is ever-changing," the oracle replied, its voice a soothing murmur. But change requires sacrifice, a path lined with uncertainties. Yeah, Vesper said, waving her hand dismissively. We'll take the Cliff Notes version if you don't mind. What's the catch? A union of wills, the Oracle said enigmatically. To defy fate is to invite its wrath, to stand against the tide and proclaim your defiance. Talos and Vesper exchanged a look. They'd always been good at defiance, but this was on a whole new scale. Still, what did they have to lose? So what do we do? Talos asked, arms crossed defiantly. The Oracle's form shimmered. Bring forth the falling stars. Only then will the veil lift and the prophecy's bonds may weaken, Vesper sighed. Falling stars, right. Just tell us where to buy a net for those, Talos shrugged. We'll figure it out. After all, we've made it this far with nothing but spit and sarcasm. Your path is your own, the Oracle intoned, and as its light dimmed, they were left with more questions than answers. They slipped back to their cages, hearts pounding with the thrill of forbidden knowledge. They were far from free, but they had a plan, a half-baked, reckless, and utterly human plan. Back in their glass enclosure, Quor joined them, eyes gleaming with curiosity. So, did you get anything useful? Talos smirked. If by useful you mean cryptic BS about falling stars, then yeah, tons. Vesper leaned back, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. But we've got something better, a reason to get out of here and shove the prophecy where the stars don't shine. Quor laughed, a deep rumble that reminded them of distant thunder. That's the spirit, humans. Count me in. Their alliance was one of necessity, but it was also one of camaraderie born from mutual disdain for their captors. They'd face the universe's judgment together, with wits as sharp as their tongues and the determination to prove that humanity was more than just an exhibit in an alien zoo. Days blurred into each other, a montage of whispered plans and stolen moments. They watched the guards grow more paranoid, their security measures tightening like a noose. But Vesper and Talos thrived in chaos, using every setback as an opportunity for improvisation. As the day of reckoning approached, their spirits were high, bolstered by their shared defiance and the promise of freedom. They were ready to challenge the stars themselves, to take on a universe that had written them off as relics of a forgotten age. One evening, as they huddled together for warmth in their glass cage, Vesper rested her head on Talos' shoulder. You know, she said softly, I think we've got a real shot at this. Talos wrapped an arm around her, his voice a low murmur. Damn right we do, and when we get out, we'll be the most famous escapees in the galaxy. Quor snorted softly from his corner. And here I thought I was the optimist. Vesper smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. Guess we're all learning, but seriously, thanks for sticking with us. Quor's eyes softened, a hint of something like camaraderie in their depths. No thanks needed. If you pull this off, it'll be one hell of a ride. Their plan was as audacious as it was reckless, but they had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. With Manty's blender and the other guards distracted, they would slip free of their glass prison, using Quor's help to navigate the maze of corridors and reach the Grand Oracle's chamber once more. It was a mad dash through a labyrinth of chaos, their hearts pounding like a drumbeat echoing in the void. They raced past bewildered guards, ducking as mechanical limbs swatted at them, their laughter a defiant melody in the symphony of confusion. As they reached the chamber, the Oracle's presence enveloped them, its form shimmering like a mirage. You return, travelers of the void. Have you found your path? Talos and Vesper exchanged a look, their defiance cemented in a shared grin. Yeah, Talos said, voice steady. We're ready to dance with destiny. The Oracle's light pulsed, a kaleidoscope of possibilities. Then go forth, bearers of chaos. May the stars guide your way. With a final glance at each other, they stepped into the unknown, ready to carve their own path through the tapestry of fate. The prophecy had underestimated them, but they'd proven time and again that humans were nothing if not resourceful. As they took their first steps toward freedom, they knew the universe may have been watching, but it had never anticipated the audacity of two determined humans and their unlikely ally. Together, they'd defy prophecy, outwit fate, and show the cosmos that Homo sapiens were far from extinct. Their journey was far from over, but they'd face it with humor, grit, and a determination to write their own story. A narrative of survival, cunning, and irreverent defiance in a universe that had tried to count them out. And so, with stars falling like a guiding constellation, they embraced their destiny with open arms and a wink to the stars above. Vesper and Talos were huddled in the corner of their glass cage, whispering through gritted teeth as Quor stood watch by the entrance. The alien had taken on the role of a reluctant babysitter, while the humans schemed their way through a plan that was about as solid as a sandcastle in a hurricane. "All right," Talos said, twirling a piece of string he found, like it was their secret weapon. We slip past the guards during the shift change. Quor distracts the Mantis Blender Brigade and we make a beeline for the artifact. Vesper raised an eyebrow, the universal sign for "this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, yet somehow we're doing it." And when we get to the artifact, what then? Pray it doesn't vaporize us on sight, Talos shrugged. Or, we could ask it nicely to defy the laws of the universe and save our sorry asses. Great plan, Vesper deadpanned. While we're at it, maybe I'll ask it to conjure up a decent cup of coffee. I've missed that more than my freedom. Their banter was interrupted by the sound of clattering metal. Quor turned, his insectoid head tilting in a way that suggested both curiosity and exasperation. "Are you two done? Because if not, I've got about 100 reasons why this is a bad idea, and they're all armed with laser cutters." Vesper waved a hand dismissively. "Nah, we'll be fine. Worst case scenario, we die horribly and become ghost stories for the other zoo exhibits." Quor's eyes narrowed. "Your optimism is infectious." "Call it a human trait," Talos shot back. "We thrive on bad odds and worse ideas." The shift change came like clockwork, or what passed for clockwork on a ship that seemed to have taken interior design tips from a fever dream. Mantis Blender guards skittered around, their mechanical limbs clinking and clanking in a symphony of poorly maintained elegance. It was now or never. Quor did his part, engaging the guards in a heated debate that involved a lot of shouting and emphatic gestures that might have been offensive in some cultures. "Go," he hissed as he blocked the view of the guards with his bulk. Vesper and Talos slipped past, their hearts pounding in sync with their feet slapping against the cold, metallic floor. Around them the ship twisted and turned, its corridors resembling the visual equivalent of a migraine. As they rounded a corner, Vesper grabbed Talos' arm, pulling them to a halt. "Do you hear that?" Talos strained his ears. Over the ambient hum of the ship, a low, thrumming noise emanated from the walls, like a pulse echoing through the bones of the vessel. The artifact. Only one way to find out. Vesper was already moving, her instincts screaming at her to turn back, but her stubbornness, or maybe her stupidity, propelling her forward. They navigated the maze-like corridors, occasionally ducking into alcoves to avoid the patrols. The ship seemed to taunt them with its shifting passages, but somehow they managed to stay ahead of their pursuers. Vesper's thoughts drifted to the Grand Oracle's cryptic words. "Falling stars," she muttered. "We've got to be the luckiest idiots in the universe if we think this artifact's gonna help us." "Luck or divine intervention," Talos said with a smirk. "Either way, it's a better plan than waiting around to be someone's dinner." They reached a door that pulsed with an eerie light. It was the kind of ominous glow that would make any sane person turn and run. Naturally, they walked right up to it. "All right," Vesper said, placing a hand on the control panel. Moment of truth. The door slid open, revealing a chamber that looked every bit as foreboding as they'd imagined. In the center stood the artifact, a massive obsidian obelisk that seemed to swallow the light around it, casting the room into a twilight of its own making. It was the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a villain's lair, complete with an aura of touch me and die. Talos took a deep breath. "Well, that looks friendly." Vesper approached cautiously, half expecting the thing to sprout limbs and start swatting at them like a particularly pissed-off deity. But it remained inert, its surface reflecting her anxious face back at her. "What now?" she asked, glancing at Talos. "Ask it about the weather," Talos suggested, leaning back against the wall like he was waiting for a bus, instead of standing before an alien artifact that probably held the key to their survival. Before Vesper could retort, the artifact hummed to life. A projection flickered before them, displaying a galaxy in turmoil. Planets crumbled, stars collided, and amidst the chaos, a single path shimmered, a beacon of hope among the ruins. Vesper stared at the scene, her heart sinking as realization dawned. "Is this our prophecy?" "Looks like it," Talos said, eyes fixed on the projection. "And if I'm reading this right, we're in deep shit." The artifact didn't offer any helpful tips or detailed instructions, just a great big metaphorical middle finger. It was like the universe itself was leaning over their shoulders, whispering, "Good luck with that." "So, the prophecy says we're screwed if we don't figure this out," Vesper summarized, more to herself than anyone else. "No pressure," Talos turned to her, his expression unusually solemn. "We might need to rethink our strategy. This isn't just about us anymore." Vesper nodded, feeling the weight of each word. "Yeah, and we're down to plan. What? Z-? Sounds about right." The sound of approaching footsteps snapped them out of their reverie. The guards, having realized Quar's distractions were a ruse, were closing in fast. "Time to go," Talos said, grabbing Vesper's hand. "We'll figure this out later." They sprinted back through the corridors, their minds racing with the implications of what they'd seen. The artifact had validated the prophecy, but it had also offered a glimmer of hope, a path, albeit shrouded in uncertainty. By the time they rejoined Quar, the alien was nursing a few bruises but looked no worse for wear. "How'd it go?" he asked, eyes flicking between them with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Vesper sighed. "Well, it didn't kill us, so that's a start. And the prophecy?" Quar pressed. "Let's just say we're not out of the woods yet." Talos gave a wry smile that was more grimace than grin. "But we've got a clue, even if it's cryptic as hell." Quar nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you trust this clue?" Vesper exchanged a look with Talos, a silent conversation that spoke volumes. "Trust might be pushing it," she admitted. "But it's all we've got." The tension between the three of them was palpable, an unspoken question hovering in the air like a specter. Trust was a fragile thing, easily broken and hard to mend. Quar broke the silence first, his voice a low rumble. "I know I may not have the same stake in this as you two, but I believe there's more to your kind than the prophecy suggests. If there's a way to change it, I'll help you find it." "Appreciate it," Talos said, clapping Quar on the shoulder. "But don't think you're off the hook. We need all the help we can get." The alien gave a nod of agreement. "Then let's get to it before we all become nothing more than a footnote in someone else's history." Their alliance was as shaky as their plan, but they'd come too far to turn back now. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but at least they weren't facing it alone. Together, they would take on the prophecy, defy the odds, and carve out a future that had been written off as impossible. And if they failed? Well, at least they'd go out with a bang, or a very sarcastic whimper. As the trio settled back into the rhythm of their shared goal, the ship around them seemed to pulse with a life of its own, an unseen force propelling them toward their tangled fates. For now, they had a direction, albeit a convoluted one, and the will to see it through. The universe had tried to count them out, but they were still in the game, and they'd play it their way. With a renewed sense of purpose, they resumed plotting their next move, their voices echoing in the confined space of their cage. In a universe that thrived on chaos and indifference, they were determined to prove that humanity was more than just a fleeting shadow in the cosmic tapestry. They were Vesper, Talos, and Quar, three unlikely allies caught in a web of prophecy and fate, ready to challenge the stars themselves. And if the universe had a problem with that, it could take it up with their sense of humor. Because if they were going down, they'd go down laughing. The moment they were back in the cage, Talos finally allowed himself a breath. It was short-lived. The ship, in its oddball wisdom, had decided to rearrange its insides again, and with a lurch, the floor beneath them shifted. He found himself sprawled, face first, against the transparent barrier that separated them from the rest of the zoo. "Nice landing," Vesper remarked dryly from a corner. She looked like she was trying to decide whether to be amused or concerned. "Graceful as ever," he grunted, peeling himself off the wall. "If this whole prophecy gig doesn't pan out, I'm auditioning for the circus." "Great plan. Maybe they need a human cannonball." Just then, a Mantis blender guard clattered past, its limbs a blur of motion and noise. If there was a creature less interested in personal space, Talos hadn't met it. It gave them a perfunctory glance, one that seemed to say, "Don't try anything stupid, or I'll enjoy making you regret it." Vesper leaned back against the glass, looking deceptively relaxed. "So, what's next on our list of suicidal ideas?" Talos rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the weight of their predicament like a lead cloak. "I was thinking of asking our captors for a guide to successful rebellion. You know, like a revolution for dummies." Her laugh was a dry rasp. "Yeah, and maybe they'll throw in a free set of steak knives. Or a chainsaw. I hear those are all the rage." They shared a moment of bleak humor, the kind that could only come from staring into the abyss and finding it wearing a clown nose. Quor chose that moment to return, his alien form slipping into the cage with the ease of someone who'd long since made his peace with its confines. "You two look like you've been sentenced to death," he observed, his voice a rich, sardonic purr. "Not quite yet, but the day is young," Vesper replied, head tilted as if she were merely discussing the weather. Quar's antennae twitched. "The guards are getting suspicious. They're planning something. That doesn't sound ominous at all," Talos muttered, scanning the shifting corridors beyond their cage. "Any idea what? Let's just say if they start handing out last meals, don't expect a buffet." "Noted." Vesper sat up, eyes narrowing. "What's our play if things go south?" Talos thought for a moment, then shrugged. "Improvise." "We're good at that." "Yeah, like the universe's worst jazz band." Before their gallows humor could descend into outright despair, the holographic display flickered to life. It projected a message in bold, authoritative letters that practically screamed, "Attention on deck, you miserable specimens." "Great," Vesper sighed. "I always love a good pep talk from our captors." The message was short and not so sweet. "All exhibits report for processing. Failure to comply will result in termination." "Processing," Talos repeated, as if the word itself was a curse. "I bet that doesn't mean spa day." Quar's normally unreadable face tightened slightly, his version of a frown. "They're planning to make an example of you. Crush any hope of rebellion. Because nothing quells rebellion quite like public executions," Vesper said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Guess we should have been practicing our last words," Talos added, attempting levity but feeling its hollowness. Quar's gaze was steady, almost softer than usual. "You must survive." The artifact's message was clear. It showed a path. A path to what? "A more stylish end." Vesper shook her head. "We saw the doom and gloom, but the path isn't exactly paved with welcome mats." "It's all we've got," Talos insisted, not for the first time realizing how absurd those words sounded when faced with near-certain death. As if their captors had been listening in, the cage door slid open, revealing two Mantis blenders flanking the entrance. Their mechanical limbs clicked menacingly, and their eyes, blank and unfeeling, promised no mercy. "Time's up, humans." One of them rasped in that metallic voice that suggested they'd been practicing intimidation in front of a mirror. "Guess it's showtime," Vesper said, standing and smoothing her rumpled clothes as if she were heading to a business meeting, not a potential execution. Talos stepped up beside her, casting Quor a sidelong glance. "We'll see you on the other side." Quor nodded, an unspoken promise passing between them. "Don't do anything too stupid." "Define stupid," Talos said, managing a grin. The guards herded them out, the corridors shifting around them in a disorienting dance. Talos couldn't help but think the ship was mocking them, laughing silently at their plight. "Remember," Vesper said under her breath, "no last stands unless absolutely necessary." "Right." Save the heroics for when we've got a better plan than die messily. Their banter was a thin shield against the mounting dread, but it was all they had. As they were led deeper into the ship, the atmosphere grew oppressive, like the walls themselves were closing in. The processing chamber awaited, a cavernous room that buzzed with the low hum of alien machinery. At its center stood a device that defied description, all angles and harsh lights, like a blender had mated with a torture rack. "That's not ominous at all," Vesper muttered, eyeing it warily. The guards branched out, forming a loose circle around them. Talos's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his face carefully neutral. No point in giving them the satisfaction. A holographic image of the Grand Oracle flickered to life above them, its presence as unsettling as ever. "Humans," it intoned, "you stand at the precipice of your destiny." "Precipice, huh?" Talos said, trying for humor despite the sweat beading on his brow. "That your word of the day?" The Oracle ignored him, its attention focused elsewhere. "Your choices have led you here to this moment of reckoning." "Yeah, we kinda figured," Vesper replied, folding her arms across her chest. "So what's the plan? Public execution to boost morale?" The Oracle's gaze shifted, a flicker of something like amusement crossing its face. "You misunderstand. This is not an end but a beginning." "Oh good," Talos said. "I love surprises." The Oracle gestured, and the machine at the room's center came to life. Lights flared, and a pulse of energy swept over them, sending a chill skittering down Talos's spine. "Comforting," Vesper remarked, her voice tight with tension. "What's this?" "An alien lie detector test. More like an examination of worth," the Oracle replied, its voice smooth and unyielding. "Your species has been marked for extinction, but the artifact has shown a path. Redemption is possible if you prove yourselves." Talos exchanged a look with Vesper. "So what? Jump through your hoops and maybe we get a second chance." "Precisely." "Fantastic," Vesper muttered. "Nothing like putting on a show under threat of death." The guards closed in, herding them closer to the machine. "Cooperate," one hissed, "or face immediate termination." "Charming as ever," Talos replied, but he complied, stepping forward with Vesper at his side. The machine's lights danced across their skin, a bizarre sensation that prickled and warmed. Talos fought down the urge to bolt, knowing it would be futile. Instead, he focused on Vesper, drawing strength from their shared resolve. The Oracle watched, its expression inscrutable. "Your choices will determine your fate. Show us what humanity is made of." "Hope you like sarcasm," Vesper said, her voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the air. The machine whirred, its sensors probing, searching. Talos felt something shift within him, a subtle tug that spoke of possibilities and choices yet to be made. It was unsettling, this forced introspection under alien scrutiny. Memories flickered past, moments of courage and cowardice, of humor and despair. Talos glimpsed them all, a montage of his life laid bare for judgment. Beside him, Vesper stood unflinching, her gaze locked on the Oracle. "Whatever you're looking for," she said, "I hope you find it before we're all toast." The examination continued, relentless and unforgiving. Time stretched, each second a small eternity. Talos felt his resolve harden, a determination that defied the odds stacked against them. Finally, the machine powered down, its lights dimming. Silence fell, heavy and expectant. "You have shown potential," the Oracle said, its tone implying this was no small feat. "The path remains open for now." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Talos replied, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. "So what's next? More tests, an obstacle course." "Continue on your journey," the Oracle instructed. "But know this, the path ahead is fraught with challenges." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Vesper said, a grim smile playing at her lips. The guards stepped back, allowing them to leave. As they retraced their steps through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, Talos felt the weight of their situation settle over him once more. "You think we've got a shot?" Vesper asked, her voice low. "Honestly," Talos replied, "I have no idea. But we've come this far, might as well see how it ends." They made their way back to their cage, the ship's shifting halls eerily silent. When they arrived, Quor was waiting, his expression impassive. "How'd it go?" he asked, scanning their faces. "We're still alive," Vesper said with a shrug that belied her relief. "Apparently that's something." Quor nodded, a glint of approval in his gaze. Then we moved forward. As they settled into the familiar confines of their glass prison, Talos reflected on the day's events. The Oracle had given them a chance, however slim, and they couldn't afford to waste it. "Guess we're not done yet," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "Not by a long shot," Vesper agreed, leaning back against the glass with a weary sigh. "And who knows? Maybe we'll even surprise ourselves." With a shared sense of purpose, they prepared for whatever lay ahead, their resolve tempered by the trials they'd faced. In a universe that seemed intent on seeing them fail, they were determined to prove it wrong. Because, in the end, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were fighting back, one sarcastic quip at a time. Vesper's current decor consisted of 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor, all transparent, all mocking, all making her feel like an ant under a magnifying glass. Solitary confinement was about as much fun as licking an electric fence. She leaned back against the cool glass, trying to ignore the fact that she was on display, like one of those hideous Christmas sweaters people pretend to like. She missed Talos's snarky commentary. Hell, she missed any commentary. The silence was stifling, a void filled only by her own thoughts, which tended to wander into dark corners she'd rather avoid. She couldn't even pace. The cage was just a bit too small for that. Instead, she settled for tapping her foot in a rhythm that matched her anxiety. The ship, in its infinite wisdom, had decided that she'd be more entertaining in isolation, possibly hoping for a meltdown. But Vesper was nothing if not stubborn, and she wasn't about to give the Mantis Blender Brigade the satisfaction. With nothing but time and her own reflection for company, her mind drifted back to Earth. To the sky that wasn't a dull gray, to the wind that wasn't filtered through machinery, to the petty arguments with Talos over who got the last slice of pizza. Funny how captivity made you nostalgic for all the trivial crap you took for granted. Suddenly, without warning, her head started to throb. Not the gentle kind of throb that suggests a nap and a couple of painkillers, but the kind that feels like someone's playing the drums inside your skull. She pressed a hand to her forehead, willing it to stop. Just as abruptly, an image flashed in her mind, a vivid picture of Talos, lounging as if he just won 1,000,000 credits at syndicate poker. Vesper. The voice wasn't really a voice. More like a thought that had decided to take a stroll through her mind. She blinked, wondering if she was finally cracking up. Talos, she thought back, skeptical and a bit hopeful, like someone hearing a rumor that their old nemesis from high school was now managing a fast food joint. "Yeah, it's me. You figured it out too, huh?" The amusement was palpable, even without the physical presence. Figured what out? How to communicate telepathically while stuck in an intergalactic zoo. Yeah, that was right up there on my to-do list. Telepathy is just another skill no one tells you about until you're desperate and have nothing better to do. Vesper made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a snort. "Great. Next thing you'll tell me is that we can fly if we just believe hard enough. Don't get greedy." One miracle at a time. In the silence that followed, Vesper felt a strange sense of comfort. It wasn't quite like having Talos there, but it was close enough. They might be separated by glass and distance, but at least she wasn't alone in her head. "So, you got a plan, or is this just your way of saying you're bored?" Vesper's thoughts carried the familiar edge of sarcasm, like a favorite coat that still fit perfectly. "Been thinking," Talos replied, with the tone of someone who'd had way too much time to think. "About that thing the Oracle said, redemption and paths and all that cryptic crap." Vesper rolled her eyes, not that he could see. "You mean the part where we're supposed to prove our worth to a bunch of overgrown bugs?" "Yeah, that was inspirational. Maybe we don't need to prove our worth to them. Maybe we just need to show ourselves what we're made of." Deep thoughts from a guy stuck in a cage. "Next you'll be starting a self-help blog." "Hey, it's either this or counting the cracks in the wall." "There aren't any cracks," Vesper pointed out. "Exactly." The silence stretched again, not unpleasantly. Vesper considered the situation, the absurdity of it all. Somehow she'd ended up part of a species on the brink of extinction, trapped in an interstellar zoo, communicating telepathically with the one person who could make her laugh when everything else was falling apart. "Think we can use this to our advantage?" she asked. "You know, outsmart the bugs with our new party trick." "Possibly. If we can coordinate without them realizing, we might be able to pull something off." Vesper smirked, the kind of grin that usually preceded a really bad idea. "So, stage a breakout using nothing but sarcasm and brainwaves. Sounds like a plan. If we don't, we'll be the main attraction at the Homo sapiens imminent extinction show." Not exactly the legacy I had in mind, Vesper thought ruefully. Same. I'd prefer to be remembered as the guy who single-handedly took down the alien overlords, but I'll settle for getting out of here alive. They both lapsed into a comfortable silence, the kind that spoke more than words ever could. Talos's presence in her mind was reassuring, a reminder that even in the darkest circumstances, they could find a way to make a joke, to laugh at their predicament, to fight back against the universe's relentless tendency to screw them over. "Any ideas on how we do this?" Vesper asked eventually, knowing full well that neither of them had a concrete plan. But then, when had they ever? "Well, the Oracle said something about a path. I say we start looking for one." "That's not a plan," Vesper thought back, though she felt a flicker of hope, ridiculous as it was. "Never said it was, but it's a start." Vesper sighed, a mental sound that Talos would no doubt appreciate. "Guess we'll just have to wing it as always." "Hey, it's gotten us this far, hasn't it?" "True. Though maybe we should start thinking a few steps ahead just in case." "Agreed. But for now, let's focus on what we can do." Vesper nodded, a gesture more for her own benefit than anything. "All right, let's do this." With their newfound connection, they began to formulate a plan, piecing together a strategy from the fragments of information they'd gathered. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble in a game that was stacked against them, but it was better than resignation. The ship continued its ceaseless motion, corridors shifting and rearranging like the world's least welcome houseguest. Vesper felt the familiar stirrings of determination, a spark that refused to be extinguished. They might be labeled as specimens, as an endangered species on the brink of extinction, but they weren't going down without a fight. In the back of her mind, she felt Talos's presence, a comforting weight against the chaos that threatened to swallow them whole. They were in this together, a team against the odds, with nothing but their wits and a newfound ability to communicate in the silence. "Let's make it count," Vesper thought, her resolve firm. "Always," Talos replied, his mental voice steady and sure. They had a plan such as it was. A chance to turn the tables on their captors, to defy the prophecy that had been laid before them. It was improbable, bordering on impossible, but when had that ever stopped them? With a shared determination, they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, ready to test the limits of their new abilities and prove, once and for all, that humanity wasn't so easily dismissed. As the ship continued its relentless journey through the stars, Vesper and Talos clung to their hope, however fragile, and prepared to challenge their fate, one sarcastic quip at a time. Vesper was busy contemplating the joys of being an alien zoo exhibit when the Mantis Blender guard did its usual routine: peek through the glass, check for signs of a human meltdown, and leave disappointed. Today, however, something unexpected happened. In her mind, Talos's voice crackled like a poorly tuned radio. "Hey Vesper, you ever notice how these guards are like the worst mall cops in the universe?" "Yeah," Vesper responded with her mental voice. "I'm half expecting one of them to ask if I want a pretzel." Their telepathic link was still new, like a pair of shoes that haven't quite been broken in, but they were getting the hang of it. Better than nothing when you're in separate cages anyway. "About that escape," Talos said. "I think we need some help from our bug-eyed friend." "Quor, you sure that's a good idea?" Vesper asked, skeptical. "He looks like he couldn't outsmart a paperclip." "Maybe, but he's got access to places we can't reach. Plus, he's got that whole I just want to be part of the team vibe," Talos replied. Vesper focused, trying to reach out to Core with her mind. "Core, you there?" "Yes, I am here," Core's voice replied, as if he were reading the menu at a restaurant. "What do you require?" "We need your help," Vesper thought. "We're planning a little jailbreak and we could use someone with sticky fingers or whatever you call those appendages." Core's response was a mix of confusion and intrigue. "You wish to escape? This is unusual." "Unusual's our middle name," Talos butted in. "We need you to get something for us. Think of it like a scavenger hunt but with more risk of incineration." "I do not understand," Core admitted, his voice as flat as ever. "Look, there's an artifact," Vesper explained. "A human creation that's been misinterpreted as some kind of powerful relic. We need it to prove we're not worth keeping on this endangered list." The alien hesitated. "And how would this assist you?" "It supposedly controls the prophecy crap they've been spouting. You help us get it, you might be helping more than just us," Talos stated. Core considered this for a moment. "If it helps, I will do it. What is this artifact?" "It's a snow globe," Vesper said, the irony not lost on her. "Yeah, you heard right. A snow globe." "I hear it's a killer at parties." Core's silence spoke volumes. "A snow globe, yep, an ancient human relic. We're very deep, culturally speaking," Talos added, his mental voice dripping with sarcasm. The plan, such as it was, involved using their newfound telepathic communication to orchestrate a complex escape. Vesper and Talos would create a distraction while Core liberated the snow globe, an item, allegedly, of great and misunderstood power. "All right, we need a distraction big enough so they bring their A-game guards," Vesper mused. "How do you feel about the classic prison riot strategy?" Talos suggested. "Love it, classic," Vesper replied, her mind voice tinged with mischief. "Though, considering it's just us causing the ruckus, it'll be more like a very enthusiastic debate." They spent the next few hours coordinating their thoughts, planning timing, and preparing to fake some serious chaos. All for a snow globe, proof that desperation and absurdity often go hand in hand. Finally, the time came. Talos gave the signal, and Vesper started banging on the glass with the kind of fervor usually reserved for overly enthusiastic sports fans. "Hey, I need to talk to your manager," Vesper shouted aloud, channeling every interaction she'd ever witnessed in a customer service nightmare scenario. The Mantis Blender Brigade didn't seem impressed, but they were interested. Meanwhile, Talos was pulling his best mime impression, thrashing and gesticulating in ways that defied gravity and shame. He imagined what his high school drama teacher would say if they could see him now. "Bravo," he thought sarcastically. Core, following their mental instructions, slinked through the interstellar zoo like a ninja in a bug suit. He entered the artifact exhibit, his multi-jointed fingers deftly maneuvering through the security systems with a surprising amount of finesse for someone who'd previously seemed as competent as a wet noodle. Back in the cages, the noise and chaos reached a crescendo. Vesper and Talos exchanged mental high fives. Time for the grand finale, Talos thought, just as he began dismantling one of the holographic displays, wires sparking like a firecracker show gone wrong. The guards finally noticed, their mechanical voices clicking in alarm. The Mantis Blender Brigade swarmed, an army of blender auditioning insects. Just then, Core's mental voice buzzed through their link. "I have the snow globe. Now get back here and release us," Vesper ordered, her heart pounding like a drum solo. Core returned, the snow globe in one spindly hand, a look of triumph crossing his otherwise unreadable face. Their alien ally slipped through the security measures like a slippery eel, unlocking the cages with a deftness they hadn't anticipated. Once free, Vesper and Talos grabbed the snow globe, holding it up like it was the Holy Grail. "Now what?" Core asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Now we see if this thing really does anything," Talos said, "or if all those legends are just a load of cosmic crap." As they stood in the corridors of the ship, the interior shifting like an indecisive Rubik's Cube, they focused on the snow globe. It was a simple thing, the kind of trinket you'd buy at an airport gift shop, but in their hands it felt like the key to their freedom. "Now, let's see what happens when we do this," Vesper said, shaking the snow globe. The ship shuddered, the lights flickering like a cheap horror movie special effect. The Mantis Blender Brigade paused, their mechanical eyes narrowing in confusion. The whole ship seemed to freeze, as if unsure whether to implode, explode, or just throw its hands up and quit. Talos and Vesper exchanged a look. "Did we just break the universe?" Talos wondered. "Feels like it," Vesper answered, heart pounding. "But I think we just short-circuited their prophecy." The lights stabilized, the corridors returning to their normal, confusing selves. The guards, previously poised to investigate, began to retreat, their collective consciousness overwhelmed by the ship's apparent hiccup in reality. "Looks like we've got a clear path," Talos said, nodding towards the exit. Quor followed, his curiosity and awe almost palpable. "You have disproven the prophecy," he stated, as if announcing the obvious. "Seems like it," Vesper said, grinning. "Turns out humans are full of surprises." With the path open, they navigated the ship, using their connection to communicate directions, avoid patrols, and finally reach the exit. The ship, defeated by the simplest of human relics, gave up its prisoners without much of a fight. Stepping out into the vastness of space, they found themselves on a landing platform with a view of the stars that was both humbling and invigorating. It was freedom, or at least the first step towards it. "So, what now?" Quor asked, glancing at the fugitives. "Now we find a way back home," Vesper replied, holding on to the snow globe like it was the most precious object in the universe. "And maybe grab a pizza," Talos added, his mental voice filled with longing. "Never realized how much I miss cheese." Together they stood on the platform, the stars their backdrop, the universe their stage. They might be on the run, but they were running towards something better, something worth fighting for. In the end, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about proving they were more than an exhibit, more than a prophecy. They were human, and that meant they had a knack for defying the odds, one sarcastic quip at a time. Vesper stood on the landing platform, cradling the snow globe like it was the last bottle of cheap wine at an intergalactic student party. Talos was glued to her side, a mental stream of sarcastic commentary keeping her entertained despite the rapidly encroaching menace of space boredom. "Bet you didn't think a snow globe would get us this far, huh?" Talos said, his voice bouncing around her skull like a caffeinated squirt. "Honestly, I figured it'd end up as a paperweight in some alien's office," Vesper replied, glancing at the stars, their cold glimmer a welcome change from the ship's sterile lights. "Instead, it's our ticket out of Dodge." Quor hovered nearby, his multi-jointed limbs twitching with curiosity. The scene around them was a chaotic ballet of freed captives, many of whom eyed the snow globe with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts or particularly tasty pizza. "So, what now?" Quor asked, his voice as monotone as ever, but there was a hint of something, perhaps hope. "You have disrupted the ship's control. What is your next move?" Vesper exchanged a look with Talos. "You know, I was thinking we could start a band. Vesper and the Escapees. Got a nice ring to it." Talos snorted, a sound that translated surprisingly well through their mental link. "I always knew you were more frontwoman material than a zoo exhibit." "Don't let the fame go to your head." Their banter was interrupted by a familiar droning whir, the sound of the Mantis Blender Brigade regrouping. It seemed the shock of the snow globe's power hadn't entirely scattered their resolve. "Time to go," Vesper said, her voice snapping into a businesslike tone. "We've got a ship to commandeer." The plan was simple: rally the Escapees, cobble together a ragtag fleet, and get the hell out before the Mantis Blenders figured out which way was up. Simple as interstellar jailbreaks went. Quor took point, his alien authority lending their chaotic procession a veneer of legitimacy, which was good, because Vesper had about as much command experience as a goldfish in a dog show. They moved through the Ringworld section, a place that seemed to have been designed by committee, and not a particularly focused one. The corridors twisted and turned, a labyrinthine nightmare that made IKEA look like a straight shot to sanity. Whoever built this place had a real sense of humor, Talos commented dryly. Or a drinking problem. Probably both, Vesper agreed, sidestepping a pitfall that looked suspiciously like a trash chute. Let's just hope we don't get lost and end up as space Greece. Their ragtag army of escapees, a veritable who's who of interstellar misfits, followed their lead. They were an odd bunch, tentacles, scales, and all manner of appendages, but united by the shared desire not to end up back in their respective cages. Vesper kept an eye on the monitors they passed, each one flickering with incomprehensible alien scripts that Talos occasionally translated with varying degrees of accuracy and sarcasm. That one says caution, temporal anomaly ahead, Talos informed her, a smug edge to his voice. Ah, my favorite kind of anomaly, Vesper quipped. Just the thing to spice up an afternoon stroll. As they moved deeper into the ship's belly, the atmosphere grew tense. Vesper could almost taste the anticipation mixed with a healthy dose of fear, an emotional cocktail that was as invigorating as it was terrifying. Their path led them to the ship's control nexus, a chamber that resembled both a command center and a fever dream. Holographic displays pulsed with data, and controls jutted out at odd angles like a puzzle that had given up trying to fit together. "All right, gang," Vesper announced, stepping up to the main console. "Time to see if we can fly this beast out of here." Talos tapped into the control systems, his mental voice humming with concentration. "These controls make zero sense. I think a three-armed octopus designed them after a bender." "Focus, Talos. We've got a ship to steal," Vesper replied, trying to maintain her bravado despite the sinking feeling in her gut. Quor joined them, his alien fingers dancing over the controls with surprising confidence. "I have some experience with these systems," he admitted, his voice as calm as a Sunday in the park. "I was once a navigator." "Now you tell us," Vesper said, shaking her head. "You had that hidden under your clueless exterior all along." Quar's eyes glinted with something akin to amusement. "I have many hidden talents." The controls began to respond, the ship thrumming to life under Quar's steady hands. It was a shaky start, but soon the vessel eased into a steady hum, like a giant engine clearing its throat. "Looks like we're in business," Talos said, his mental voice tinged with relief. "Let's get out of here before someone realizes we don't belong." As the ship powered up, Vesper turned to the motley crew of escapees. "All right, folks, strap in or hold on, whichever you're more comfortable with. We're making a run for it." The ship shuddered, metal groaning as Quor deftly guided it away from the ringworld section. Outside, the stars stretched out, an endless ocean of possibilities that beckoned with the promise of freedom and the unknown. "Next stop, anywhere but here," Vesper declared, her heart thumping in her chest like a drumbeat of determination. Talos was quiet for a moment, then he spoke, his mental voice softer than usual. "You know, I didn't think we'd actually make it this far." "Neither did I," Vesper admitted, a smile tugging at her lips. "But here we are, breaking out of an alien zoo with a snow globe." Their eyes met, a moment of understanding passing between them. It was a connection born from shared struggle, a bond that neither space nor time could easily sever. Quor, busy at the helm, glanced back at them. "You humans are indeed full of surprises." "Yeah, well, don't get used to it," Vesper replied, trying to keep her tone light. "We're just getting started." The ship surged forward, breaking free from the gravitational pull of the ringworld. As they sailed into the vastness of space, a cheer went up from the escapees, a sound of triumph and defiance. Vesper's mind buzzed with the possibilities ahead. They had escaped, but now they faced the real challenge, finding a place to call home in a universe where they were the odd ones out. "Guess we'll just have to take it one day at a time," Talos said, catching her thoughts. "Sounds like a plan," Vesper agreed, her gaze fixed on the stars. "And who knows, maybe we'll find a place where we can finally relax." Talos chuckled, a sound that echoed warmly in her mind. "And maybe even start that band." Vesper and the escapees, I think we've got a hit on our hands." As they sailed into the unknown, Vesper felt a wave of relief wash over her. They were free, they were together, and for the first time in a long while she felt hopeful. After all, if a snow globe could help them escape an alien zoo, then anything was possible. And with Talos by her side, she was ready to take on whatever the universe could throw at them, one sarcastic quip at a time.